What is going on, guys? Welcome back. Jimmy's YouTube channel again. We're here. I wouldn't say it's breaking news, but we're here to talk about Tyson Fury coming over to MMA. And I just tell you, I would be so much more excited about this if it didn't involve Conor McGregor. Like, I'm so over Conor McGregor right now. The fact that he is getting involved and his stock has plummeted so much. The last thing I needed was one of my favorite boxers to align with Conor McGregor. But Jimmy, historically, we haven't seen this tale end well, but Tyson Fury is also, in my opinion, a completely different athlete than we've seen in a very long time. So this is very perplexing, to say the least.
Yeah. Well, here's the deal. First off, I'm going to be coached by the notorious one, Conor McGregor, is a little, to me, indicative of, there are way better coaches out there. You don't, and I'm not saying Conor McGregor is a bad coach. I don't really know. I haven't seen him coach that much. If he said, I'm going to SBG, I'm going to Team Kavanaugh, I'd be like, okay, cool, then that makes sense. But just, hey, I think I'll have Conor McGregor. It's so casual fan. Like, if you ask a casual fan, who do you want to train you? Well, Conor McGregor. And you're like, no, you know Javier Mendez is? Nope. Do you know who Ricardo Laborio is? Nope. Okay, they're way better coaches. That's just the name most people know. So one of the first things I thought when I heard that was like, man, he sounds like he hasn't done a whole lot of research about who's a better coach. Not that Conor McGregor is a bad coach, but there are much better coaches out there. But you also have to remember, this being kind of what it is, a guy with a ton of crossover potential who's going to be at the end of his career. I want to make that very, very clear that he said, I want to finish boxing in 2020, have a couple, 3 big fights. He's 31. And then kind of try MMA out kind of for fun, a lot of money, but not as much as he would make boxing. And so there are a few factors that make it different from other times we've seen boxers try to cross over. I want to make that very clear that this is I'm done with boxing, but I still want to try something fun and give it a shot. Now, we don't know if he's going to actually do this, but assuming he does, he's in a better circumstance than a lot of the boxers that have tried to cross over and do it.
What's interesting to me is he spoke about this before. He came out and basically had challenged Cain Velasquez back in 2013, basically just wanted to have a stand-up fight. He actually said that MMA is for people who can't box. And to me, when I originally heard that 6 years ago, I was very upset by that as an MMA fan. I was very disrespected by that as an MMA fan. And it's odd now, as you mentioned, that when he goes into coaching, he chooses someone who honestly is best known most recently for tapping against Khabib and Nate. So it's very odd that that's where he would go to strengthen this ground game.
Yeah.
There's no doubt, right? There's no doubt that he has incredible punching power, is very elusive, is really, from a stand-up, capability, probably the best fighter I've seen. If we're just doing stand-up, I put him right up there with actual Mike Tyson as far as power, probably give him the advantage of in his movement. He just really is. You couldn't draw up a better boxer, in my opinion. And that includes Muhammad Ali. I feel like Tyson has obviously a lot more size than Ali ever did. So it's odd that we're going to see a transition now to the ground where I don't think that you can bridge that gap. There's so much that needs to be learned in such a short period of time. And Conor McGregor is awesome at tapping out the last couple times I've seen him, but that's not what Tyson needs to learn. And honestly, he'd probably be better suited just to keep it standing up. And we've seen that can happen. Francis Ngannou does an admirable job at keeping fights standing. So it's an odd thing for him to come out and say.
Well, another thing is, who are they going to match him up with? Here's a hint. Not Curtis Blades. Not Stipe, right? Not someone who's going to go in there and try and take him down. Ngannou versus Fury, who knows what's going to happen in a year, but let's say it would be that kind of matchup. It wouldn't be an Overeem as a clinch game that could, kick and knee him right through the fence. But there are plenty of fighters that you could line up with Tyson Fury who will stand and bang with him, at least for a little bit. That, he's in the one division where there are enough guys in there. A great boxer, Vasily Lomachenko, although he has fantastic footwork. Vasily Lomachenko, for example, if he fought at bantamweight, too many guys can take him down. It would just, unless he got 10 years of wrestling experience in a year, he couldn't make that transition. Heavyweight, Tyson Fury is in a division where you can just be big, solid, and hit hard and go pretty far. You could argue Greg Hardy doesn't have a whole lot more than that. Tai Tuivasa doesn't have a whole lot more than that. Mark Hunt never had a whole lot more than that. And, Mark Hunt had a decent career. Who knows where Greg Hardy's going to go? So the interesting thing is if Tyson Fury is matched properly, which they are motivated to do, he could get a couple wins in there. Obviously, he'll never be a title contender, in my opinion. He'll never beat the elite of the elite because they're too well-rounded. But there are some fighters they can match him up with that he could win, and it would make him a lot of money, make the UFC a lot of money. So it makes sense simply because of where he is physically as well. A talented Floyd Mayweather at 145 gets destroyed. Lomachenko at 135, even though he has, once again, much better footwork than most. Why? Those guys are too well-rounded. Canelo Alvarez at 155, he just couldn't stop the takedown. There are too many good grapplers and kickers and well-rounded guys. And heavyweight, you got heavy hands, and you can stop one takedown, maybe two. You can beat a lot of guys, and that's where Tyson Fury is.
It's funny, as you were reading down your requirements, essentially, the only name coming to my mind was like, okay, no takedown defense, will stand and trade, doesn't care. I'm thinking Greg Hardy, and then you say Greg Hardy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what fan doesn't want to see that? Like, every fan that I know kind of wants to see Greg Hardy get what's coming to him. Tyson Fury can easily do that, but I guess the real question is, do we get Greg Hardy with or without the inhalers? Because to me, that's going to be the big difference.
I think we're going to no inhaler Greg Hardy from here on out. I don't think he wants to risk another no contest.
What if we just did 5 rounds, Greg Hardy gets an inhaler after every single round, and we know that it's not going to add a 2?
I'm with that.
I'm with Greg Hardy in the inhaler.
Everybody forgets. Well, most people forget. Nothing is worse than a bad heavyweight fight. Nothing in MMA is just soul-sucking like a bad heavyweight fight. When they're both out of gas and they're dying and they're getting stood up and they can't keep going. Oh, it's the absolute worst. So I'm for whatever prevents that. Whether it's no inhaler and he just gasses out so bad he can't continue fighting, or he gets it every 2 minutes and it keeps him going for 25 minutes. Whatever. Just as long as we don't see those. Oh, my God. 2 exhausted, lumbering behemoths trying to hit each other is the worst.
So I guess we can close out with this, and you've kind of in a way answered it. Do you feel that this is going to be a UFC signing, and do you feel like we're going to see the slow build like we've seen with some fighters in the past, or do you feel like just because of his name, this has to be thrown right into the fire and get not a top name, but a mid-card guy? And if you do have a loss here out of Tyson Fury, does this impact his legacy at all? I say that because, the Conor McGregor-Mayweather fight, in hindsight, didn't do nearly as much for either of their legacies as I thought it would as it happened. I know you're not a big proponent of the fight. I don't want you to get into that now. I know it upsets you. But do you feel like this would impact his legacy at all if things went south?
No. I don't. If he finishes, let's say, because he wants another couple fighters. He mentioned the last 3 fights he wants. I think it's a couple with Wilder, and then a farewell fight in December. So he wants Wilder twice because he thinks he's going to win, and then they get a rubber match because they fought before and it was a draw. So I think he wants to beat him twice, and then farewell in December. Let's say, for argument's sake, he beats Wilder twice, and then whoever he fights in December, he beats him. This is a great, all-time great heavyweight boxer. He did a great job. He goes to him and he loses, who cares? He's not a mixed martial artist. Do I think they'll go big? Number one, only the UFC can really afford him. Only the UFC could really afford to bring him in here for a fight. Obviously, maybe Rising in Japan. Japanese spend a lot of money. I don't think that makes a lot of sense for them. But I know they did it with Mayweather. But I think the UFC is where he would end up. I think they make a huge deal out of it. I think he fights a low to mid-level guy, and even if he loses, they bring him back. CM Punk got 2, and he had no business being in there at all, and he got 2. So I think no matter what, they make a big deal about it. He gets a low to mid-level guy, and they bring him back at least twice, win or lose.
Interesting thing that you did mention. I mean, this is a massive pay cut for him either way, right?
Huge.
Yeah, probably a pay cut he'll talk about as well. And then I guess since we brought up the Maymack fight, does this have to be a pay-per-view with a certain extra charge to it, given it's Tyson Fury's MMA debut, or do you think they're just going to feed us along with the regular pricing?
No, I think he would be not co-main event on a pay-per-view. I think they would give him the CM Punk treatment. Remember in Chicago, he was, I think, the first fight on the main card? He wasn't co-main. He wasn't the main event. When he fought, who was it, Mike Jackson? When he fought Mike Jackson, it was, I want to say he was the first fight on the main card. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I think they'll do the same thing with him, where he'll lead into a big pay-per-view, but he won't be main or co-main. So that crossover, hey, come see Tyson Fury make his MMA debut in the first fight of, this main card, which I think is a good play because CM Punk, which is my example, had no business being there. He had no background in combat sports to speak of. A top flight boxer like Tyson Fury, I don't mind getting that leg up as much. You know what I mean? If you bring in Jordan Burroughs, who is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time from the United States, if he made his UFC debut, I would expect him to get a big fight in his first fight, pay-per-view level stuff. Why? He put in the years in combat sports, wrestling in this case. If a top flight kickboxer comes from, K1 isn't really around anymore, but, a K1 Max champ comes to the UFC, yeah, I expect that person to get a little push. Tyson Fury put in his years in combat sports. He's not walking in because he's a celebrity and a professional wrestler or some other crap. He's an actual real fighter. So I wouldn't mind him being the opening fight on a main card of a pay-per-view for his UFC debut. That wouldn't bother me like it would, a professional wrestler doing the same thing, because that's not a combat sport. You're an entertainer, an actor, stuntman, essentially was what, to me, pro wrestling is. Tyson Fury is a real legit fighter who put in years to become a great boxing heavyweight. And I don't mind seeing what he has in MMA. And I think that's a good placement for him. Big pay-per-view, title fight. He's the opening fight on the card. I'd watch it.
I'm embarrassed to say I was at both of CM Punk's events, and I don't recall where he drew on the fight card. I know he was he was on both
main
posters.
Or co-main. Right, but he wasn't main or, at least for the one I called in Chicago, he wasn't main or co-main.
I will remember them far less than I will remember Tyson Fury's fight at MMA, if that comes to fruition. If it does, as we kind of learn more about this very early entrance to MMA by Tyson Fury, we will make sure that we come back to cover it as often as we can. We appreciate you guys checking this out, and we will be back very shortly with more commentary. As we can, we appreciate you guys checking this out, and we will be back very shortly